Okay, so hopefully Tripod will stay in place. I've been getting some of the tracks to use, preview tracks. Just wanted to get feedback from y'all and see how you like them. Bearing in mind they're not mastered, and they're kind of compressed because I've been sending them out as MP3s, so the actual album will sound 10 gazillion times better. But I got a few questions back that I want to address because, I talked to a lot of you about the sort of creative process and what goes into making these songs and, what the inspiration is and whatnot. Before you saw some clips in the studio and you can see kind of how the process comes together there. The first question is why Japanese Satellites, the title of the album rather. Part of it, well, it's an album dealing with relationships, it's an album dealing with loss, breakups, and how that affects you, and sort of drawing connections between that and living in New York, and going through the entire process as a New Yorker. And I say that because when I think of a satellite, I think of something sort of distant, remote, that's kind of circling the globe or circling and observing everything, but without any real locus or centering point. And I said Japanese Satellites. There's one night after I got out of a long-term relationship where I was effectively sitting in my apartment, being very emo, watching YouTube clips of, I think it was Misora Hibari, who's a very popular enka singer before she passed away at a rather young age. But if you hear her voice is amazing, and she has so much weight to what she's singing when she sings about. She's sort of like the last of the Showa period singers in Japan. In any case, I was watching one of her videos, and I was just a mess, and it sort of got me thinking about watching this feed, which is, I think, probably posted by somebody in Japan. And granted, it wasn't a satellite feed, but it just got me thinking about distance and satellites and all that stuff. But the way that ties in with New York is that a lot of the tracks, a question somebody asked me was, why are some of these tracks based around city titles, or names of cities, rather? And I joke with people that part of being a New Yorker is having this nonstop wanderlust. Like, I have to leave New York. I got to leave it. It's making me crazy. And you never do. None of us ever do. We stay there forever, spending most of our time pining for other cities, but at the same time knowing deep down inside that we think New York is the best. And this year I happened to do a lot more traveling than I usually do. I did a show out in Seattle, did a show in Boston. I think it was this year. I went out to California, around Sacramento in the Bay Area and some other parts. Maybe that was 2 years ago. In any case, since the last album, I've done some traveling within the U.S. And I think I tend to put a lot of weight into assuming what a city's culture is. Now, granted, cities are made up of everybody and they bring their respective cultures to the table, but I do think there are certain patterns that cities are known for. New York's fast-paced and aggressive. I guess Seattle struck me as kind of like a very left-leaning libertarian paradise where it's just kind of chill and you do your own thing. Boston, I can't quite put my finger on Boston. Somebody was saying one time that they thought Philly was sort of like a bastard stepchild in New York, but that's not true because Philly definitely has its own thing going on. But what I'm getting at is that I tend to associate cities with individuals I know who come from them and with what those individuals bring forth. Or let's say, a lot of people in New York are from all over the place, right? And I think when they come to New York, they're bringing their own set of experiences from wherever they grew up to the table. That shapes who they are, how they handle interpersonal relationships and whatnot. So it's a very roundabout answer, but essentially the referencing different cities is referencing different peoples and different cultures that I have fallen for, because the other thing I said earlier at one point I joked about, and it's partly true, is some of these songs are about really substantial long-term relationships that came to an end in the whole mourning process and whatnot. And then some of them are about one-night stands that really kind of got funny because as far as stereotypes go, guys, they just sort of wham bam and then you're done. I'd like to pretend I'm that way, but in truth, I'm like, oh my God, we slept together, I love you. Ah. And then rather than being a crazy, clingy high school girl, I still am, but I just try to mash it out in songs and sort of get all my feelings on paper that way. So to conclude this completely incoherent explanation, I met a Japanese satellite. I fell in love, and we're having Japanese satellite babies next week. Yeah, it's amazing. Tear.
So you see that? That's my sustenance. It stems from that magical bag of goodness, and it's running very low. So despite the disgusting weather,
I'm going to force myself out the door today to Shinjuku. I was originally going to walk it, because I think it's like an hour walk from here, but I'm going to go to Shinjuku, pick up probably 2 bags of freshly ground mixed blend coffee, because that stuff is so good. Get some tea, and then, if time permits, try to set up a bank account today. And there's one bank that was recommended on a bunch of foreigner-friendly sites as being foreigner-friendly. Now, I don't know what that means as far as APR goes, but it certainly means that when I try to set up an account, they won't think I'm trying to buy life insurance or some other mishap that inevitably will happen when my language skills. Well, here's the problem I've been having in general, and this is not just with the bank, it's not just with the, bodega, not the bodega, the convenience store. I speak with enough confidence that people think my Japanese is better than it is. So I'll say something, and it'll be in the polite form or proper form, and then they'll just come at me with a wall of keigo or a wall of formal talk, and I'm just sort of like, so this could be an interesting situation at the bank. Other thing I got to do today, bank, coffee, and some more job hunting. I heard back from another school, I think. They're all starting to blur together. What I'm concerned about is I don't want to get in the situation I was in back in 99 or 2000, where in an attempt to get the highest paralegal salary, I essentially toilet papered New York City with my resume. Like every firm, every headhunting agency had it, and it was fine. I got my name out there on one hand, but on the other hand, it made me look like a spastic, desperate not desperate housewife, desperate paralegal. So in this go around with the English teaching, it's a small field. I think a lot of them know each other, and I want to make sure that in getting the resume out there, I'm not overkilling it. So I may just sort of put the feelers out to 1 or 2 more schools, but right now it's a waiting process, and then if nothing pans out, look at the paralegaling part-time. Ultimately, the whole reason I'm here, other than just I have wanted to be in Tokyo for years, is that I want to try to do music here and see how it pans out. So, ideally get the day job stuff out of the way just so that I have income. But ultimately, I do want to start auditioning for projects and collaborating. So if I have downtime today, go to some of those websites that handle auditions for foreign talent and see what their protocol is, etc. And then tonight, Erica Hirokawa and I are having a nice dinner at her place. And then tomorrow's another day. You see how I talk about my agenda and then it just completely peters out because I get distracted by